It's hard to imagine, but there exists such a peculiar country in the world, where all citizens go barefoot, children are forbidden to spend money, and everyone is prohibited from wearing shorts above the knees. I'm referring to Myanmar, a unique country in the Southeast Asian region. Join me on a journey to Myanmar, where I'll show you 15 prohibitions and peculiarities that exist only in this land. Number 15. Men wearing skirts. Would you believe that there's a place where men wear skirts more than women do? They're not homosexuals, they're genuine men, and they wear skirts because they're Myanmar people. The traditional attire of Myanmar people is called the longi, a type of garment similar to a wraparound skirt. Men tie the knot in the front while women tie it at the side. They wear skirts in their daily activities, from going to work, temples, markets, and even when riding motorcycles or playing sports. Usually, men in Myanmar wear underwear underneath, while in some rural areas, they might not wear anything underneath. According to locals, this is a way to cope with the harsh weather during the dry season when temperatures can rise to 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know how it feels to wear that skirt, but it seems that the men here are quite comfortable, and they also look quite interesting. Number 14. Red teeth. If you see a smile from a Myanmar person at night, you might think they're demons because their teeth are reddish. But don't panic, to them, it's just a sign of healthy teeth. Myanmar people have a habit of chewing betel nut, a type of herb chewed raw similar to how it's done in Vietnam. The betel nut here consists of betel leaves without lime, a bit of tobacco, and a piece of native tree nut. Not only the elderly or women but even young people and men like to chew betel nut. They chew betel nut regardless of the activity they're doing, whether driving, selling goods, walking, or shopping. Many people when chewing betel nut carry a small spittoon to spit out the saliva and remnants, but sometimes they spit directly on the street. So, if you come here for tourism, don't be surprised to occasionally see red-stained water outside hotels, on the streets, or in shopping areas. And with the continuous chewing of betel nut throughout the day, their teeth naturally take on the red color of the betel nut. Elderly people who have been chewing betel nut for a long time will have darker colored teeth, and the wonderful effect of betel nut is that it makes their teeth extremely strong and healthy. Number 13. Terrifying driving experience. A life-saving advice for you and your fellow travelers is to rent the newest car possible from a reputable company to start your journey exploring Myanmar, because if you accidentally rent an old car, you will feel nauseous just a few kilometers into the journey as the vehicles here are very unreliable. Cars in Myanmar are mainly old, imported from Japan. The cars are designed for both left-hand and right-hand drive. Due to the ban on motorcycles, public transportation is quite developed here, but mainly consists of old trucks and buses, with locals improvising additional seats for passengers at the back. Drivers always exceed the prescribed number of passengers, and passengers even accept clinging onto the vehicles, climbing onto the roof to travel regardless of the potential danger to their lives. The roads here are wide, but the road surfaces are very poor as the government rarely maintains them, making you feel like you're riding in a vehicle for transporting animals rather than a passenger vehicle. Number 12. Prohibition on asking about women's families. Recently, according to Myanmar government statistics, about 30% of women in major cities in Myanmar tend to not build families. Moreover, in the office environment, this trend goes up to over 50%. For certain reasons, women are very reluctant to be asked about family matters. Therefore, you should not ask local women about marriage or family matters. In the cultural communication with Myanmar women, this is a taboo that you should remember. In addition to the prohibition on asking about family when communicating with girls, you must also remember not to mock when talking to locals. In Myanmar, native people are very serious. They are also friendly and welcoming to tourists. But you must not ridicule or mock their personal issues. For example, whether men wear skirts or people chew betel nuts. This is a characteristic traditional culture of the Myanmar people. So you should not, or rather are not allowed to, ridicule them. Number 11. Women with long necks. You might think these are images created by artificial intelligence, but no, these are entirely real images of women with extremely long necks in Myanmar. Women of the Kayan tribe, belonging to the Karen ethnic group living in Myanmar, have a very strange beauty custom of wearing many rings on their necks to elongate them. At the age of 5, Kayan girls start wearing rings around their necks made of brass. They are stacked on top of each other and gradually elongate their necks over time by exerting pressure on the collarbones and chest. At 8 years old, girls wear the next set of rings, weighing 1 kilogram, and 4 years later, a set of rings weighing 1.5 kilograms. According to a 4-year cycle, Kayan women will be supplemented with rings until they feel their necks cannot be lengthened anymore. This practice ends when they reach 45 years old. The rings will stay with them until they pass away. On average, each Kayan woman wears over 20 stacked rings around their necks, weighing about 10 kilograms. There are many explanations for this strange custom of the Kayan people. According to traditional beliefs, the more rings a Kayan woman wears around her neck, the more it reflects the nobility and wealth of her family. At the same time, it also symbolizes the long-standing traditional culture of the tribe. But there is also an opposite explanation that Kayan tribe women wear many neck rings to diminish their beauty to avoid human trafficking and the prying eyes of other tribes. Meanwhile, another explanation suggests that this custom stems from the self-protection of women against wild animals. In the past, when men went hunting, women had to stay at home, and wild animals often approached. So by wearing rings, women could protect themselves from being bitten by wild animals. Over time, this habit spread and became one of the strange and unique customs of the Kayan people. Estimates suggest that this body modification practice dates back to the 11th century and has become a tradition over 1,000 years old. Wearing heavy rings for a long time also affects the health of Kayan women to some extent, such as damaged neck skin and a discolored appearance compared to other parts of the body. However, Kayan women do not want to remove them. The reason is that they have worn the rings since childhood, and it has become an indispensable part of their bodies. Another interesting point is that when a woman betrays her husband, she is forced to remove these rings as a punishment. Perhaps this is one of the most important reasons why many Kayan women refuse to remove their neck rings. Number 10. Do not use old money. If you've just arrived in Myanmar, don't be surprised to find that all the money the vendors give you is new, and they also require you to pay them back with new money. It's very complex and confusing, but this is a law applied throughout the entire territory of this country. There is no specific reason for this. Maybe it's the Myanmar people's preference for new things, and secondly, they may think new money lasts longer than old bills. Even government services in Myanmar do not accept payment in old money, especially in places with many foreign visitors like airports, border crossings. In Myanmar, besides kyats, you can use US dollars for payment, but US dollars can only be used in shopping centers or large restaurants, and of course, they must be new. Number 9. Do not touch the head. If you accidentally touch the head of a child in Myanmar, you will immediately be scolded and attacked by their parents. I know you're very surprised and don't understand what's happening, but you deserve to be reprimanded, even physically, because you have violated a taboo in this country. According to the beliefs of the Myanmar people, the head is considered the most sacred part of the body. Therefore, touching someone else's head, even in a friendly manner, is considered extremely rude by the Myanmar people. Even with adorable children, you should not touch their heads. Similarly, touching or pointing your feet at someone or something, especially the Buddha statues in Myanmar, is considered extremely disrespectful. Because the feet are the most disrespectful part of the body. Moreover, tourists visiting this country should not place their feet on objects. It's best not to let anyone see you violate these taboos, or if so, leave immediately to avoid unnecessary trouble in this overly superstitious country. Number 8. Prohibition on giving money to children. Once again, I have to talk about the unspoken rules when encountering children in this country. That is, do not give any child even a penny, no matter how pitiful they may look. In Myanmar, giving money to children is considered encouraging them to skip school and beg, and you also indirectly show disdain for their parents, or worse, you may think their parents are dead. Another reason this is prohibited is that it may support those who exploit children for money, such as orphanages specializing in exploiting children. In Myanmar, there are many orphan children, and orphanages often use them as money-making tools for their managers. Tourists like you will be targets that these children will follow until you give them money. Although I know you are a compassionate person, remind yourself that not giving money is actually helping these children. Number 7. Quirky makeup. Myanmar women rarely wear makeup, but they use Thanaka sunblock powder, a powder made from the bark and wood of the Thanaka tree. The powder, made from the bark of the Thanaka tree, is pounded by adults into pieces about 10 centimeters long. People grind this stick on a wet stone and use the resulting powder to apply to their faces. For Myanmar women, this is the most effective powder for sun protection, makeup, and skin care both day and night. Not only is it sunscreen specifically for women, but men and children also use sunblock powder when going out or working. Wherever you go, you can see the faces of the people in Myanmar covered in powder, as if it's always a festive occasion. Depending on the artist's hand, they create different shapes, some simply draw circles, some rectangles, some hearts, leaves, or flowers. Myanmar people apply powder to protect against the sun and whiten the skin, although their skin is generally very dark. While there is no difference in the skin of someone who regularly applies sunscreen and someone who doesn't, people here still believe that Thanaka powder will make their skin whiter and more beautiful. Number 6. Prohibition on exposing knees. Myanmar has a relatively hot climate, but no matter how hot it is, never wear shorts or short skirts out, especially in sacred areas. Before visiting religious sites in Myanmar, everyone must cover their knees and shoulders. Even in Bagan, where many temples and pagodas have no guards, tourists should still abide by this rule if they do not want the locals to look at them with discomfort or be asked to leave the temple. Some places even do not allow women to approach the altars or directly light incense. Prohibiting the wearing of shorts, exposing knees, and shoulders in Myanmar is not a measure of public behavior management imposed by the government or regulatory agencies. This is a strict prohibition based on their culture and religion. Myanmar follows Buddhism, and as we all know, Buddhism has many complicated rules regarding behavior, clothing, and especially gender distinctions. Therefore, in sacred areas, Myanmar people often do not welcome women, and if you violate the dress code, you will be considered disrespectful to their religion. And being chased away or even cursed severely is quite normal. Number 5. Prohibition on using the left hand. Consider your left hand injured and unusable when visiting Myanmar. It might sound like silly advice, but it's actually what you should do in this country. In Myanmar culture, the left hand should only be used for hygiene activities. Therefore, they believe the left hand is not clean enough for other tasks. That's why when eating, they use their right hand to pick up food. Near the dining table, there will be a basin of water, and before starting the meal, you must wash your hands first before enjoying the food. Moreover, you should not use your left hand to hand objects to others. You can only use your right hand or both hands to hand objects to others. Especially, if you use your left hand to shake hands with a local or even touch a monk, congratulations, you will be immediately expelled from there for daring to offend human beings and the sacred things in their culture. Number 4. Prohibition on touching monks. Anyone who has traveled to Southeast Asia will know that just like in Thailand or Cambodia, monks in Myanmar are highly respected. Therefore, people often show their respect by not shaking hands with them, and they are not allowed to touch them, especially for women. I have to emphasize again that women are absolutely not allowed to touch monks. Women in Myanmar must use a handkerchief to pick up objects and are absolutely not allowed to touch monks directly. They believe that women can dirty the body and especially the soul of a monk, and in Buddhism, there is an absolute prohibition against violating the celibacy. Monks must always keep away from women to maintain purity of the soul and reach the highest realms in Buddhism. However, this prohibition also shows that their culture is somewhat lacking in respect for women. Let's try to ask the opposite question. If they have a pure soul, why are they afraid to touch women, even just for a handshake? Number 3. Prohibition on killing. Even if it's just an ant, I must remind you that even the life of an ant, you are not allowed to harm. If the locals see it or the monks find out, the eyes of hatred will all be directed at you. Myanmar is a country steeped in Buddhist religion. Therefore, killing is often listed as prohibited here. When you go to the markets in Myanmar, you will surely find it difficult to find stalls selling live animals such as fish, cattle, chickens, etc. Myanmar people usually only buy meat that has been prepared and processed. In daily life, they never kill except in unavoidable or accidental situations. There is one thing that makes Myanmar friendlier in the eyes of tourists: they don't eat dog meat. While most Southeast Asian countries like this dish, Myanmar says no to it, so dogs in this country live quite comfortably and are rarely harmed. Number 2. No shoes in temples. If you visit a temple in Myanmar, don't be surprised to see everyone barefoot from the street to the temple. I must remind you again that the people of Myanmar highly worship Buddhism. They worship Buddha to the extent that when they visit any temple, they will leave their shoes outside the temple, no matter how big or wide the temple is. Therefore, when entering any temple or pagoda in Myanmar, you should leave your shoes outside. Don't be lazy to take them off and invite trouble. Because wearing shoes into a temple in Myanmar is considered disrespectful to the deities in the temple. But there is a problem with this tradition in Myanmar: when villains deliberately throw syringes containing HIV-infected blood and other dangerous blood-borne diseases on the temple grounds. Many innocent, devout people have become victims of them, so every morning, the monks have to search and clean the temple grounds. In addition, people entering and leaving are often checked to ensure they are not carrying anything dangerous. Number 1. The country of temples. Perhaps when mentioning Southeast Asia, you will remember that Thailand is known as the country of pagodas, then Myanmar is compared to the country of temples. Over 90% of the population here follows Buddhism, so throughout the country, there are thousands of different-sized temples. The grandeur, uniqueness in architecture of the temple towers will make any visitor feel overwhelmed. If the ancient capital Bagan is where the most ancient and respected temples in Myanmar are located, Yangon is famous for its unique gold-plated temples in the world. The most famous of them is the Shwedagon Pagoda. The pagoda holds 4 religious treasures most important to the people here, including Buddha's staff, Buddha's water filter, Buddha's robe, and Buddha's hair. The special thing is that the temple is gilded with 90 tons of gold. The top of the tower is adorned with thousands of colorful diamonds, emeralds, gold bells, and rubies. You didn't miss here. At night you will see these temples shining. From prohibiting wearing short clothes to regulations about interacting with monks, Myanmar contains unique cultural rules and characteristics. I hope that through this video, you have learned more about Myanmar and its unique cultural and religious characteristics. Keep exploring and respecting cultural diversity around the world. Thank you for watching our video.